March 27 was the worst day in Myanmar since the takeover from the military. Soldiers attacked the citizens indiscriminately, killing 114 citizens. March 27 was originally referred as Armed Forces Day in Myanmar after the 1962 military coup. However, on March 27, citizens called it as Myanmar's Resistance Day and had a protest in 40 cities across the country at the same time. Even before this incident, with the result of more than 114 dead citizens, there was a bloody Sunday in Myanmar on March 14, on which 38 people were killed by the military. Due to the complex situation, I will briefly explain the background that many are not aware of. Myanmar has a father of the nation. Aung San Suu Kyi's father, Myanmar General Aung San, has led Myanmar's independence movement against Britain and Japan. First, he tried to drive out the Britain which ruled Myanmar. But after the Britain were driven out, the Japanese came to Myanmar. So General Aung San started an anti-Japan war. After the defeat of Japan in the World War II, Aung San established a provisional government in Myanmar, and so they gained independence. Myanmar's independence was officially achieved by the 1947 treaty with UK, the Aung San Athlete Agreement. Then in April 1947, the general election in Myanmar took place and the National Assembly was also formed. But just 3 months later, all 7 key figures in the Myanmar parliamentary cabinet, including General Aung San, were assassinated during the meeting. And later, another general named Ne Win took over and ruined Myanmar's newly won independence by exploding his power and launching a military coup in 1962. Since he took power, the military dictatorship continued in Myanmar for 50 years. Angry about these terrible conditions, the people of Myanmar started the 8888 uprising on August 8, 1988. Under the motto of that 26 years of military dictatorship should end, a protest for the democratization of the government on the part of the citizens was held. And from this 8888 uprising, more than 3,000 Myanmar citizens died. Of course, Myanmar's military dictatorship did not collapse, despite the more than 3,000 deaths, but Myanmar's hope began to rise. After the 8888 uprising against the military dictatorship, Ne Win resigned in 1989, held democratic elections in 1990, and the National League for Democracy, named the LND, led by Aung San Suu Kyi, won 82% victory by the landslide. But after that, another problem arose. At this time, a new force called the New Army emerged and staged another coup, annulling the previous elections, resulting in Aung San Suu Kyi imprisonment. Aung San Suu Kyi was then awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1991. Eventually, the former military was gone because of the 8888 uprising, but the democratization of Myanmar did not last long and ultimately failed due to the emergence of the new military organization. New military dictatorship lasted for another 25 years. But in 2015, Myanmar finally achieved its first democratic government in a free democratic election, with Aung San Suu Kyi's party, NLD, taking a major victory. In 2020, when a US presidential election received the world's attention to the United States, there was also a general election in Myanmar, and Aung San Suu Kyi's party won with a majority victory of roughly 83% of the total elected seats. And this is where the current problem began. In February 2021, Myanmar's armed forces rose and staged another coup. After the military dictatorship, it was the first democratic government in 25 years, but the coup took place again. The reason given by the military is that they don't agree with the election results. And because of them, democracy in Myanmar was on the verge of disappearing again. The understanding about the unusual political structure of Myanmar is necessary to understand why the military carried out a coup. The civil government of Myanmar is different from that of other countries. In most countries, a president appoints a defense minister or commander-in-chief of the armed forces, but in Myanmar this is handled differently. Even if the president of Myanmar is elected by the citizens, the military is a separate body and operates as such one. Among other things, Myanmar's military commander-in-chief is elected by the military and not by the president. So even if someone wins the election in Myanmar, it has nothing to do with the military sector. The president has no influence on the military part, and moreover, the supreme military commander is the head of the three ministries: home security, defense security, and border security. Therefore, the president of Myanmar forms only a civil government, and at the same time there is a separate power which forms the military unit. And this leads to another problem. The constitution of Myanmar was drawn up by the military, so that 25% of all parliamentary seats are legally assigned to the military. This time, however, Aung San Suu Kyi tried to bring about the constitutional amendment to the military, as it does not make sense for 25% of the seats not to be elected by a vote, but to always stand firmly in the military. And this is a military constitutional amendment is the main reason for the incident in Myanmar. Through a constitutional amendment, Myanmar tried to prevent the military from influencing Myanmar. These were the changes Aung San Suu Kyi wanted. We will not go back to the past. We will reduce the 25% of the military seats in parliament over the next 15 years. Of course, the military was strongly against it, and there was another situation in Myanmar that is difficult to understand. A constitutional change in itself was actually legally impossible in Myanmar for Aung San Suu Kyi. The requirement for constitutional amendment in Myanmar would require 75% approval of parliament. However, as I said, the 25% of the Myanmar's parliament seat was designated to the military. Therefore, it is impossible to revise the constitution without the consent of the military itself. But although Aung San Suu Kyi knew that this was almost impossible endeavor, she proposed the constitutional amendment as the most representative promise to citizens. The military was noticeably tensed as a result, as they worried that the announced constitutional amendment would give them the power change, and that they would lose their authority over the armed forces. However, the election result showed that the Myanmar people wanted a change, and this was demonstrated by the overwhelming 84% win for NLD in 2020. Since then, Aung San Suu Kyi has tried to implement the constitutional amendment that she promised, but the military opposed it and ultimately carried out this coup. The military said, "We will not accept the result of the elections. Also, we cannot accept the amendment as it would only weaken the power of the military." The military called for re-election under the supervision of the military government. In short, despite an overwhelming 84% support from the citizens of Myanmar, the military called for re-election and arrested Aung San Suu Kyi. And this in turn sparked a huge protest in Myanmar. From the military's point of view, if they are pushed back this time, they will not be able to get their seats, which is why they are putting citizens under heavy pressures with armed forces and tanks. The estimated number of fatalities in Myanmar since the start of the coup is around 550 as of April 4th. Some very unfortunate incidents have occurred in connection with this, including the death of the taekwondo teacher named Carlsin, who was wearing a t-shirt that said, "Everything will be fine," and the death of the Kim Myo-chit, a 7-year-old girl. Kim Myo-chit became the youngest victim of Myanmar's bloody coup. After Myanmar citizens called for nationwide protest on the 27th, the soldiers warned on the state media MLRT that protesters should prepare to be shot in the head, and they later shot at the demonstrators indiscriminately. On March 27, the day of resistance in Myanmar, countless Myanmar citizens took to the street. At the time, some protesters built iron shields and bamboo arrows to repel the military's bullet, but 114 citizens ultimately died. Because of this, the Myanmars say the following: Myanmar was unable to free itself from the military dictatorship, although 3,000 people lost their lives in the 8888 uprising on August 8, 1988. If we don't succeed in this process right now, we will go back to the past. The Myanmars don't want to go back to the past, which includes a military dictatorship. And with this stance, Myanmar and South Korea share similar views on their history, because South Korea also suffered from military dictatorship for a long time, and there were many protests and uprisings against it then, as in Myanmar now. That is why the following sentence is circulating in Myanmar. If the citizens of Myanmar can handle this situation, we will become a South Korea. And if we fail, we will become a North Korea. People of Myanmar was unsuccessful in 1988. But in 2021, the people of Myanmar is again fighting for their freedom and waiting for spring of Myanmar. Myanmar, a country where the sad story of its past repeats itself. I hope that this time Myanmar's democratization will lead to success, and Myanmar will finally get its well-deserved spring. Sharing this video draws attention to the situation and injustice in Myanmar also may help contribute to Myanmar's spring. Thanks for watching, comments, likes, and sharing. Be safe.